What if the reason poverty isn't being disrupted is because we've been measuring effort instead of impact? Good morning, and welcome to Disrupting Poverty Through Leadership That Develops Results AM Talk Show. I'm your host, Dr. Tekemia Dorsey, and today we're confronting a leadership blind spot that quietly limits progress. Data without direction does not create change. Because in many organizations, there is no shortage of data, but there is a shortage of data that drives decisions and produces results. Today's episode, well, obviously it's not that, but today's episode title is Data Driven Impact, measuring what actually changes outcomes. Let's be clear. Leaders often say that they are data driven, right? But here is the real question. Are you using data to report or to transform? Because too often, data is used to justify activity, satisfy reporting requirements, or reinforcing existing strategies instead of doing what it should do, which is challenge decisions and improve outcomes. So when data is not used or used ineffectively, decisions aren't challenged and outcomes are not improved. Let's begin by identifying where measurement often goes wrong. In your organization, can you identify where measurement often goes wrong? If so, leave your comments in the chat. And that's important because not all data is valuable. In fact, some data create a false sense of success. There are vanity metrics such as number of participants, number of programs delivered, attendance rates, and even hours of engagement. These metrics tell you what happened, but not what changed. The truth is, what's that, Dr. Dorsey? The truth is, activity is not impact. You can have a plethora of programs, you can have a plethora of people in a room that's important, you can have a plethora of data, but activity in programs does not equally equate to impact. So, if vanity metrics fall short, what should leaders actually be measuring? That's a great question. Impact measured metrics focus on outcomes over time. That means that what leaders are measuring are things such as job placement rates, wage growth, retention and employment, career advancement, reduction in barrier to success, tangible things. These metrics answer the real question that data driven solutions ask often, and that is, did this effort improve someone's economic position? And guess what? If that answer isn't clear, The strategy is not working. Yes. If the metrics doesn't answer the real question, did this effort or these efforts improve someone's economic position? The hard truth is that strategy isn't working. Houston, we have a problem. But identifying the right metrics is only the first step. Leaders must build systems to track that data. If you're not tracking data, short term or long term, then you have no idea what's working and what isn't. So, data driven leadership requires an infrastructure, not guesswork. You can guess all day. I guess this is working. I guess this is working. I guess that's working. No, you want to eventually move the needle and be able to show how you move that needle. So, data driven leadership, which is what most school systems need, what Fortune 5 companies need, what county executives need, what we need in mayors and leaders that are effective, requires an infrastructure, not guesswork. And you're probably wondering, what does that mean, Dr. Dorsey? Great question. Data driven leadership that requires infrastructure includes things like collecting data consistently across programs. Now, if you are a nonprofit or in high ranking leadership, collecting data does not always yield, or even research, let me put it that way. If you are into collecting data, data is not always going to lead you where you want to go. Sometimes data won't even yield any results if it's not collected or properly prepped correctly. But what data will do is to tell you what's happening, tell you where to go, tell you the impact that it's having or whatever program or activity that you're having. So collecting data consistently across programs help you to see a plethora of things. Another aspect is tracking individuals over time, not just when they get through the door. We talked about this in another episode where when you're looking at return on investment, in order to have a return on investment, you should be upscaling or rescaling to ensure that you're not going to lose those individuals within the internal aspects of your organization. Because once you get people in the door, they want to figure out where they're going, how long they stand there, what the advancement level looks like, what are the opportunities and what are options, right? So tracking data of performance, morale, training, outcomes, it helps you to understand quality over quantity, and it helps to drive numbers. So it's not just from an entry level standpoint. Another aspect of data driven leadership in that infrastructure phase is integrating data across departments and partners. So again, you're always thinking as your organization by itself, but you're also thinking of organizations that you're partnering with, right? Or you're hoping to partner with, because any match made in organizational heaven always want to see what you're bringing to the table and what you've done. And data helps to do just that. So integrating data in departments internally and then partnerships externally lead to the bottom line of improving anyone's economic value and mobility. And last but not least, using technology to streamline reporting. We're in an AI phase. We're in an AI stage. AI is always around us. So even if you are an individual that doesn't come from a research background or do not have within your budget this fiscal year or even the next 2 to 3 fiscal years to hire someone to be your tech guru, use the technology software at your disposal to begin to collect that data consistently. Because here's what we know: without systems, data becomes fragmented and unreliable. You're collecting data in January, collecting data in June, you're collecting data in September, you're collecting data in December. What is that showing you? That you got gaps everywhere. It's not consistent. It's 3 months in a quarter. Every month you should be collecting that data, good, bad, or indifferent. Because strong systems create clear visibility into outcomes. Strong systems create clear visibility into outcomes. And what do organizations look for? What do partnerships value? Outcomes and visibility or leadership that's going to lead to those outcomes. Now, let's talk about how leaders should actually use that data. So, great, you're collecting data consistently. You got the AI programs or AI or a tech person there to kind of help make sense of that data, qualitative, quantitative, mixed method. You're tracking individuals over time, not just entry level. And you're trying to integrate that data across departments and partners. How do you do that? And once you do it as a leader in your organization, what do you do with it? Does it just sit on your desk and collect dust? Sometimes. But data should not sit in reports, right? It should drive action. I said earlier that data helps to lead you where things are going, what the trends are, what people are saying, how people feel, what the crunch numbers look like. How did you do last quarter to project the next 3 quarters, right? So it should drive action, not sit in reports. What does that mean, Dr. Dorsey? What it means is that adjusting strategies based on results. Data help you to understand what's working and what's not working, where the gaps are closing and where the gaps are widening. And your job as the leader or within your leadership team is to adjust strategies based on those results to continue an upward movement and upward momentum for success, right? Absolutely. Why do you want to be working on a business every day and you're not seeing any positive outcomes? Make it make sense, right? In addition, scaling with that data that's going to drive action, you want to scale what works and end what doesn't. If it didn't work the first quarter, and maybe you wanted to try it the second quarter, after that next 30 days, if it's not doing anything, put it in a closet. Move it out of your streamline. Remove it from your pipeline because you want to scale what works and end what doesn't work. You want to allocate resources based on impact. What that means in a nutshell, you want to put money where your mouth is, right? You want to put money in things that's going to yield the results in a movement and not keep putting money into dead weight. And if I can use an example, let's look at nonprofits. Nonprofits, I'm not jumping on you, but it's really easy to identify, right? And we talked about this in another podcast episode. Nonprofits' number one thing or number one focal point is fundraising or having a pipeline of funding sources. You're always asking and you want to receive. But when you're asking those funders and you don't have the data that drives action, they don't want to fund you. Because again, they want to scale and support what works and they push to the side what doesn't. And if as a nonprofit, you're not showing that the programs you're putting together, the fact that you need to hire people want to support you other than the one off, they're not going to be interested in allocating their resources into your organization. And then holding leadership accountable to outcomes. That's a big one because anyone can sit behind a desk with a great view and say that I'm the CEO, or I'm the head of this division, or I'm the most important person in the room because I got letters behind my name. But if that individual cannot be accountable to the good, the bad, and the ugly, we might need somebody else in those seats, right? Because again, holding leaders accountable to outcomes, allocating resources based off impact, scaling what works and getting rid of things that don't, and adjusting strategies based on results all come from the data that your organization has collected consistently. And it's going to help not just build momentum, scale your business, and have a huge return on investment. It's going to help you understand in which direction you need to go or not go or no longer be in. Data is not just information, it is a leadership tool when used effectively, generate the outcomes that's needed and that's wanted in any organizational setting. And at the end of the day, it's about paying those dollar bills, y'all. So if decisions aren't changing, the data isn't being used effectively. So collecting data consistently is important. And finally, data must lead to scale, not stagnation. Don't let the data sit in reports and not utilize it. It's not working for anyone, right? So once leaders identify what produces results, the next step is scaling. So before you go out and jump in and say, Dr. Dorsey said that we need to collect data. Whoa, pump the brakes. Remember, it's quite a few things that's a part of that data collection. Go back and rewind this episode to hear what they are before you jump into the scale mode, right? Because those preemptive steps will help as you continue with the long-term impact and the long-term longevity of where you want to go with moving from producing results to scalability. And that means when you're now identifying results that work and you're in a position to scale your business, your organization, your program, your partnership, you're going to expand programs more successfully. You're going to be able to replicate effective models. You're going to start being able to share data across sectors and not being overwhelmed by it because you understand that data drives action. And we want to keep moving forward in an upward mobility and invest in proven strategies that make sense and that works. Impact grows when success is intentional and repeatable. Impact grows when success is intentional and repeatable. And if it's not repeatable, it's not working. If you're not intentionally utilizing the data effectively, close your doors. Close out your bank account. Move out the way. Scaling is not about doing more. It's about doing more of what works. So if you're scaling and you're scaling in a way that is not making sense, or you're not producing outcomes, or the results aren't positive, stop it. Stop. Go back to the drawing board. Because scaling is more about doing what works than about just doing. So let's bring this into action, right? Here is your leadership challenge. And I'm always challenging you at the end of a podcast session because this is not just you being here and filling up space, it's filling up air. No, I want you to take this theory and put it in practical application that works for you, because that's what leadership does. Leadership is always challenging the status quo, and the most important person is the mirrored reflection. So here is your leadership challenge. Identify one metric you are currently tracking that does not reflect real impact. Wow, that was a deep one. Let me repeat it. Identify one metric you are currently tracking that does not reflect real impact. Number 2, replace it with one outcome-based metric. So you're tracking it, you're identifying if it has a real impact or not. And if not, then replace it with one outcome-based metric. Then you're going to use that data to make one strategic decision within the next 30 days. Short-term goals, short-term wins. Because here's the reality. What you measure determines what you prioritize. And what you prioritize determines what changes. What you measure determines what you prioritize. And what you prioritize determines what changes. And if you're in leadership, you want to create change. You want to have greater impact. You want your legacy to be real. So the challenge starts with you, leader. So measure what you measure determines what you prioritize. So what are you prioritizing right now? What are you prioritizing this week? Scale back and listen to the leadership challenge. And then what you prioritize determines what changes. And leaders who measure the right things are the one who delivers real results. And that's why leaders, it's hard to fill the shoes of extraordinary leaders, because they understand this. This has been a powerful episode. So if this episode challenged how you think about data, I want you to take the next step. I want you to follow Disrupting Poverty Through Leadership That Delivers Results AM talk show on YouTube. Then I want you to share one metric you're committed to changing. Drop it below. And I want you to tag a leader who needs to move from reporting to results. Because data doesn't always disrupt poverty. It's how leaders use it that does. I am so excited that you tuned in. Until the next episode, have a phenomenal day. Take on those challenges, including that of yourself, and hit the ground running to the next positive phase of your life. Until next time, I'm out. Have a great day.